Mayor Wagner, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, man. I'm excited to be sitting here with you. Caldwell is an up and coming place. You guys are growing like crazy. It seems like you're going through growing pains, but good things are happening. Like, talk to me about the state of Caldwell.
Yeah, and I agree completely. Caldwell is just booming, and you're going to have pains one way or the other, whether it's growing pains or going backwards. And so we'd much rather have the pains of going forward and growing on that. And this just continues to surpass even all of our expectations. So Caldwell's led, the state several times. We just had another study come out that said that Caldwell's #1 in growth in the state right now, 51 in the country. And I guess depends on which side of your table you're looking at. That's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's a really great thing. And it does come with some hurdles on that, but yeah, things are just booming in Caldwell right now.
Okay. One thing that I've been educated, because I'm not like a civil engineer or a city planner, but one thing that I got educated on years ago when I started this is, look, everybody likes, well, okay, excuse me. Not everybody likes growth, but home builders like growth,
Yep.
right? Economically, people like growth, right? Like if you're a restaurant and you're like, hey, yeah, if there are more people closer to me, that's better. And you guys have some phenomenal restaurants, so that's great.
Yep.
But one big problem, though, as well, is providing jobs for those people, because you can't just become a bedroom community that's reliant on people's either retirement or, out of state funds. Like, you got to really have some kind of job maintenance program to keep integrating people economically into the area. And you also have services, right? Like, you need, paramedics, you need fire, you need education. Like, how are you guys attempting to balance those things? And I know you're not responsible. I mean, obviously we have school districts and stuff, and Caldwell's not responsible for those things. But to the extent that you can, how are you guys trying to balance the growth, housing growth, population growth, and integrate economically and everything else?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great question. And so look, for you, I am a planner, so we do have a planner in the room.
There we go.
So that does help with that. But there are so many different aspects to growth. And I think I would say that maybe not everybody appreciates growth, but I believe the majority do, whether they believe it or not. Because even if they don't like growth, they want their shopping centers, they want their grocery stores nearby, they want the one that they like.
Parking lots.
Yeah, that as well. And you don't get those things without growth. Like, you don't get, the new Walmart, the new Fred Meyer, the new Target that comes to town that people want unless there's rooftops. And so even if they're against growth, they want the things that come with growth. And so I think that's important to note. And then, yeah, it's a very delicate balancing act with so many things. And as a city, we want to make sure we take those into account. A lot of people don't think we do, but when applications come before the council, there's so many things to look at. It's the economic impact that's going to have, but it's going to affect schools. It's going to affect your police and your fire response. So those are all things that really do go into account on it. And the toughest thing really right now is probably with schools. It is so difficult with the overcrowding that's happening. We've seen recently in the city of Middleton, they try to get a bond, and they cut that thing way back to try to get support, and it didn't even get any more votes than it did the last time. And so that makes it really tough when you're not able to build those schools, because you still need the growth to come in to sustain your city. But if you can't get those things approved, then sooner or later something's going to have to give. And it's just, that's the toughest thing I think right now, is balancing that and making sure schools know, look, we do care, we want to make sure that's provided, but we can't just stop growth, because then everything's going to tumble. So how do we tackle that? Still to be determined. We're trying to figure those things out.
Middleton took a very interesting position on this, because they passed the essentially overcrowding ordinance that it's, if there's a school within the area where a developer wants to develop that is at or exceeding like 105% capacity or something, then they will not issue the building permit, right? That's the idea, which is, hey, we cannot sacrifice the existing quality of our community for future people coming in here, right? We have to build, and again, everybody says growth pays for growth, but we essentially have to grow at the appropriate rate. If you already have a school that's 130% at capacity, you can't just build another 1,000 home subdivision on within that area. So is there any talk in Caldwell of engaging in something like that? Or are you guys more looking at, no, let's not hamper the free market, because, by the way, housing prices then get affected too. Because if there are 1,000 more families that want to move into Middleton and you don't have the 1,000 houses, well, then you have more people going after a fixed number of goods, and that's just going to increase prices. So how is Caldwell addressing this? Are you trying to allow for the free market to drive prices down by offering additional supply, or are you trying to balance out and protect the services that exist already in Caldwell and hamper growth?
Yeah, so I think it's like a balance of both of those. So we are not looking at creating an ordinance similar to Middleton's. I understand what they're trying to do. It's a difficult road to do that on your own. And I think you hit it perfectly, that if you start to do those things, the housing market's already tough enough for people to attain a house. Affordable housing, I think, is gone. Now it's the attainable housing that you talk about. And then
affordable housing was a bad look anyway. Let's just talk about attainable. Is it attainable?
That's right. Yeah. And today it's almost not even just the median home price is not attainable for the majority of the people that live here. And if you cut off the supply, the demand is still there. And as we know, low supply, high demand, the prices are going to go up even more. And so that's the difficult thing. Understand what you're trying to do with it. But by doing that, you are really negatively, in my opinion, affecting your community, because now home prices are going to get even more expensive because there's less of them there. And then trying to catch up, like if you have a 6 month, a year span of like stopped growth or stalled growth, it's going to take you 5+ years to catch back up on that. And so that's the tough thing, is if you do try to stop that, trying to get back to where you could have been, it takes a substantial amount of time. And it doesn't just affect the homes, it affects the commercial, it affects the industrial to your community. All of those things really come into play.
So it sounds like ultimately you're like, look, yeah, we care about school services and things like that, but we cannot, like, we're going to have a bigger problem if we put like a moratorium on building for a year or something. Like, it's just going to compound the problem because people aren't going to stop moving to Caldwell. Mm-hmm. It's just that now we're going to be catching up that much more. So what do you do then?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's what I think everybody is trying to figure out. There's some city, one city in particular that's implemented a fee for building permits to try to help pay for some of their fire and police. Other cities are a little leery on doing that, and so that's the question that everybody's trying to answer right now. We're all in the process of working through our budgets as cities, so we're looking at that. Making sure that we can provide the services we need. Police and fire are always going to be at the top because you have to have those services for your community. If you're not a safe community, nobody wants to be there. If you can't put out the fires and do those things, you can't live there. So those are some top priorities. And then adding to, our economic growth in the city as well, providing for that. So delicate balance, we're working through it. We have some amazing staff at the city of Caldwell, and they do an incredible job of getting whatever they can out of it. And I think really we've got to start working with the legislature. Legislature and the cities need to be able to come together and work on these things and figure something out. We feel that we're being hamstrung from the state. The state feels that the cities are doing too much. And so what can we do to meet together and really figure it out? Because at the end of the day, we all serve the same people. We serve the citizens of Idaho. And so we need to be able to try to figure out what can we do together to solve these issues.
I was going to ask if there's a legislative aspect for this in your mind, because obviously one of the great slowdowns as far as modifying in a flexible manner is HB 389 from years back, where you brought up impact fees, right? It's like, hey, you're building 1,000 homes, you guys are going to pay this one-time fee up front. Mm-hmm. But the real problem is not that you have impact fees that are these one-time fees. The real problem is that the impact fees will only pay for a salary or many salaries for a fixed amount of time, because it's even if you have like $1 million extra, but it's like, yeah, I got $1 million. It's like, great. And that'll get you like one person at $100,000 for 10 years. And mind you, probably need more than just one person. Mm-hmm. And the budget is probably not just that one person's salary, but either say like a police cruiser, you have police departments that you got to pay for. You got to pay for, if it's fire, you got to pay for salaries, and you also have to pay for fire stations. And of course, you can't just add on one firefighter, right? You need like a 4 or 5 person crew. Mm-hmm. So the expenses compound. So even if you had $1 million with like a 4 or 5 person fire crew, that's literally funding for 2 years, and then it's all over. And if you have a stop in growth, if you have a stop in that impact fee through construction, then you essentially have these people that are like, well, I've been here for 2 years and we have to let all of you go now because you don't have that repetitive income. That's where 389 comes in saying, hey, we're going to decrease how much budgets can increase on an annual basis, right? And that's where we see, override levies coming in. Obviously, Chief Stowell from Canyon County Paramedics was able to get a temporary levy for 2 years, but we saw obviously the Star Middleton Fire District, they were not able to get their levy passed. Bond passed rather. So if we don't have a consistent funding source to keep paying for those services, what do we do outside of going to the legislation and saying, hey, we need to change something up here?
Yeah, and I think it's, trying to come up with some solutions so with like impact fees. So with impact fees, you actually cannot use that for salaries. So it has to be fixed assets.
So like the fire station. You can build a fire station, but you can't actually fund the repetitive cost of the salaries.
Yep, correct. On that. And so,
is the mitigation the salaries?
So mitigation, like there's so the city of Star uses
Sure.
a mitigation fee, and so that's what they are utilizing to pay for those salaries.
Gotcha,
It's my
gotcha.
understanding, and Mayor Shadow could know much better on that, but that's my understanding in that regard. So yeah, with the impact fees, you can use it. It needs to last at least 10 years or longer. So depending on how your vehicles are, if you can get them to last 10 years, you
Sure.
can use that. That can be tough, but you know your fire trucks, your stations, police, some police cars, if you can get them to last that long, you can use that. But again, to fund those salaries, that's where it's property tax that pays for those dollars.
Right.
And the biggest issue that we're seeing with HB 389 is the compounding factor of, and that does limit how much you can grow with your budget, which is fine. I think that you shouldn't be able to just, grow
Sure.
exponentially and not have any reins on that. But what we're seeing is the biggest issue is the 90% number. So what that is on your new growth, you only get to count 90% of the value of that new growth. Everything else is the same 100%, but new growth, only 90%. Your first year, not too big of an issue. Unless you're a small city, it can actually be really big, but that is a compounding factor. So it's like compounding interest, right? If you have a bank account with simple interest and a bank account with compounding interest, compounding at the end of the day is going to trump the other one significantly. And so that's what we're seeing, is that as years are going by, it's been, I think, 4 years now, that it's getting harder and harder every year, because that number grows every year of the amount that you're not able to take and to provide the services for those new homes. And so it gets tough to have new growth pay for new growth, because we can't, because we only get to count for 90% of it instead of the full 100% in that first year. And then that just carries forward.
And even with that, and again, please correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but a lot of people, let's say moving from my former state that shall not be named, a lot of people move in, they're like, hey, there are double the number of houses. Well, you're getting double the amount of property tax. And you have to stop and be like, that's not how this works here. Because again, I had the same misconception when I moved here. Like, no. You can't do that, right? Essentially what happens is you have a fixed budget. Let's say whatever the budget is for let's say city of Caldwell, the city proper is $1 million, and you double the number of people there. Or let's take the police department, because you could see an increase in service. It's like, okay, if you double the number of people, theoretically, you need to double the size of the police department. Theoretically.
Yep.
Okay. But if the budget's $1 million, HB 389 hampers it to just a 3 or at most 8% growth. So you don't go from $1 million to $2 million as you've doubled in size. You go from $1 million to $1,080,000,
Yep.
right? Like that's it. And like, that's all you get. So you have this, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers for Caldwell, but I know Star doubled in roughly 4 years. And you did not have a doubling of city services. Like the cost of the fire, it's like, okay, you have twice as many houses, or twice as much of the population, twice as many people potentially having a heart attack that you're going to have to go, save. All of these things, and your budget over that same 4-year period only went up like 30%.
Yeah.
So that's essentially, like, that's the problem. You can double the number of rooftops, but you're not doubling the amount of property tax that you're getting from those rooftops. In fact, all of those property taxes likely go down because you're distributing the same budget over twice as many houses.
Yeah, I know. And that's a great way to put it. And so I think what we saw over the last 4 years, once COVID hit, and this is starting to level out a little bit, is you saw a change. So it used to be, residential values were here and commercial there, but then it started to switch, where now residential was actually paying the majority of it rather than the commercial, because the residential values went up so much faster than commercial. And so you didn't have the chance to kind of adjust for those. And so the burden started to fall more on the residential, starting to come back now a little bit, with commercial starting to catch back up. But where you had those incredible increases, I mean, literally, I was looking at numbers today where you had like 20% increases in home prices from one year to the next, and commercial was like 3 to 5% increase. And so now your taxable value for your city is more on the residential than the commercial. And so that burden started to rest more of those residential properties. And again, it's starting to come back. And that's one thing that in the city that we're really trying to focus on at Caldwell is, how do we continue to increase our commercial growth? How do we continue to get more industrial in the city? And that will help significantly as those things continue to come in, increase our tax base on a commercial industrial level.
Okay. So if you're wanting more tax base from commercial, hotels are probably a good idea.
You would think so. So
look, and I'm not up to speed on it, but like, what is the anxiety around the hotel and parking lot in Caldwell?
Yeah, and I'm
Like,
glad.
and I've read like small clip it. Like, I don't know a whole lot about it, I'll be honest, but I do know people are really worked up over it.
Yep, they are. And I'm glad that you actually brought that up, because I think a lot of it is just allowing us to explain the situation, that people have gotten so worried about it that they don't realize that we've actually come up with some really great solutions on it. And I actually been meeting with the rodeo several times a week. We've been meeting with the county fair, say what can we do to make sure that we still provide not only as good, but even a better experience on that. So as you mentioned, new hotels coming to Caldwell. We're super excited. It is going on a dirt lot that the city does own. And so they toured Caldwell with our economic development director. He showed him many different sites, not this one.
This was the hotel developer?
Yep, the hotel developer. So they drove by and they were like, hey, what about this property? And they're like, well, that one's owned by the city. I wasn't going to show you that one. They're like, we love this site. We love the location. It's great. It's right next to the rodeo. It's right in the Caldwell Event Center. It is next to the railroad tracks. They're like, you know what? That's not a problem. We can take care of that. And so they are the ones that actually picked that site. Came to the council because they had to get a lease because it was city owned on that. And so it went to the council and the council approved. They decided it was a 4-2 vote. The council approved the hotel to go on that site. Now,
to be clear, you didn't get a vote because it wasn't a tie. So it's like, hey, man, like council decided this. You're the mayor. They say execute. You say done.
Yep.
Great.
That's exactly, and that's how it works. That's exactly right. And so we've been working on that. And so that dirt lot was used for parking over just the last 10 years. It hasn't been there forever. I mean, I grew up in Caldwell when I was going to high school. That's where the entertainment was at, not the parking. And so it hasn't always been a parking lot, but about 10 years ago, it became what it is now. And so that parking obviously is going to get lost with the hotel coming in. And so people are worried, what are we going to do for the FFA and for the kids and things like that coming in, and for the rodeo for people to park. And we've been working really closely with the rodeo. We've been working closely with the fair to ensure that everybody's going to have a great experience. The kids are going to be fine getting taken care of, getting their animals in. We have areas designated for that. And we've actually almost tripled. So the number of parking spots that were lost, we've more than tripled that number within the vicinity. We're going to have shuttles. We're going to have golf carts out driving around people to get them there. It's not that much further, and many, many more spaces. So we have the solution to the problem. It's just allowing the public to know about it and expressing that to them so they can see what the solution is.
Okay, help me understand then. What are people freaked out about? Is it just that one, it's like, hey, this is the way we've quote always done it. It's like we've done this for 10 years. Like, and again, like if there are people that just moved here like myself, please forgive us. It's like, hey, it was not like this forever. And it's like, you got here 15 minutes ago. Like that was actually one of my first, I interviewed this guy, AJ Osborne, years ago. He was like interview number 15 or something. And he has a high-end, like luxury storage business where he makes, RV boat storage, but doesn't just make it look boxy, makes it look pretty nice. And it's, plays really well in specific areas where people want more than just, a box. And we were talking about the development to the west of where we are, to the west of 55. And he was like, look, this got sold to developers like 15, 20 years ago, and they're just waiting. I think they're leasing it back to the farmers for like $1 a year or something like that. And the bottom line was like, that was my first great realization. It's like, hey man, you don't know anything about this area. Like it's a real slap in the face. Oh my God, I really don't. Like, I don't know what this area has been going through. I don't know the trajectory these businesses or these landowners are on. And who am I to say that like people can or cannot use land the way they want to? One point that he brought up, he's like, listen, if you take a farmer and this farmer's had this farm in his house or in his family for generations, or he purchased it himself when he was a younger person, and now he's going to sell it because it was retirement. It was like, if you deny that person the right to develop in the way that they were told they could, you're literally forcing labor onto that person because they're still going to have to pay the property taxes. They're still going to have to maintain the property. And if you're saying, no, man, you can't sell this for development, you have to work this land. It's like, what? That's not the way things go. Like, that's not freedom. He doesn't have property rights then effectively. It's whoever yells the loudest has the property rights. And that's not appropriate. So like, is it really just that people were thinking like, hey, this is the way it's always been, and things are changing and they're not upset or they're not happy about it?
And I think that's part of it on that they just don't want the change. And like you said, going back 10 years, so Caldwell 10 years ago was probably around 45,000 people. We're right about 80,000 now. So we have almost double. So if you think about it, yeah, that for those people, that is how it's always been. Not realizing before that there was other solutions to the problem. And so I think that, that they're worried about losing that. And then the thing is just allowing us to show, we've tried to do that. We're going to continue to do that, to show the plans that we have, and just people listening. Again, don't listen to the loudest voice. Don't listen to the most critiques on the Facebook page. Come and ask those questions and learn about what we're doing, because we're working so well with the county fair, working so with the rodeo to make sure that we're going to provide a great experience. I know I had recently a comment on Instagram from a gentleman, and it was a fair comment, a nice one. He asked about, what's the parking? So I highlighted the great improvements at the rodeo grounds. There's a $7 million project that's in the works at the rodeo grounds right now. It's amazing. So I was highlighting that, and the comment was, okay, well, now where is everybody going to park when they go to the rodeo? And I appreciated the comment because it gave me the chance to say, okay, sure, just so you know, I just met with the rodeo yesterday. We have these plans. We're going to have shuttle buses. We're going to have drop-offs at these locations. We're going to have a map showing everybody how to get there. We have triple, if not quadruple, the number of spots we used to have. So it allows that dialogue. So I think it's just people allowing the dialogue to happen and not listening to just the loudest voice.
Man, that's a hard thing to do. It's hard to let the dialogue happen. So I had this gal, Lynn, from the Snake River Stampede Rodeo in, and we're chatting about the rodeo because obviously we're switching time. The Caldwell Rodeo is in August, correct?
Correct.
And the Stampede Rodeo is getting moved to June. So it's, kind of a big shift. And there are a bunch of other rodeos in the area that are conflicting with it. And I brought up Sebastian Griffin, who's a city councilman in Nampa. And I was like, oh, well, like Sebastian went to the Nampa Rodeo last year. And she was like, I don't think so. And I'm like, no, he did. She's like, this is the Nampa Rodeo. And I was like, complete idiot. Like, wait a minute. I thought it was in Nampa, but I thought it was the Snake River. She's like, the Snake River is the Nampa. So I called Sebastian on speakerphone on the spot. I was like, you told me you rode at the Nampa Rodeo. He was like, it was the Caldwell Nights Rodeo, you idiot. It's like, damn it, man. It's like, why is the Nampa City Councilman coming to the Caldwell Rodeo? It didn't make sense to me. But yeah, like everybody's super pumped about it. And I'm really hopeful that I can go this year. I was out of town last year. But it looks like a fantastic event. Like, there's no way you would want to hamper that or diminish the success of that event.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I've been going to the Caldwell Night Rodeo since I was in high school. And so I've seen it all, and it's been amazing. And the growth, we just celebrated our 100-year anniversary last year. And so, and you said it perfectly, like the city actually. So I remember it was at the 99th annual rodeo, and I ran into a good friend of mine, Ed Lodge, and then also Rob Vavold. Rob was the president, or coming in president. Ed was the vice president. And so I said, hey, we need to do something, because they had come forward when I was the planner at the city with some plans of expansion at the rodeo. Yeah. And I remember I saw them and I pulled them and said, hey guys, we need to start talking. And so we did. I said, what can we do to get that vision of yours in place, and even try to get it in place by the 100-year anniversary? So we sat down. I was able to work with the council to find some money. So we started with $1 million and we got it up to $1.6 million. We came to an agreement like, okay, you raise all the money you can, we'll match it up to $1.6 million. So that way it give incentive for those people to say, okay, if I give $1, the city's giving $1. Right. And it was a great partnership. And so we were able to give that $1.6 million for them, and they've gone way beyond the $1.6 million and continuing to do so. But again, why would the city put in $1.6 million into enhancing the rodeo grounds if we're just going to limit its growth and ability on that? And so we're in 100% to make sure it works, it's going to function. And yeah, we're not going to make those great improvements and then limit the parking. And so we have great plans in place, and it's just going to continue to grow. We're so excited for what the future holds. It's amazing. So you need to make sure you get out there.
Yeah, listen, I will. Do you guys have an auditorium district in Canyon County?
So we do not. City of Nampa does, but Caldwell does not have one currently.
Because it's my understanding that the auditorium districts, their primary function is, hey, look, what can we do to make this area more attractive for people, attracting events, attracting like conventions, attracting visitors and things of that nature. So they take it's essentially a tax on hospitality, like hotels and whatnot, that accumulates, and then they use that for the betterment of the city. That's essentially the plan with the auditorium districts, right?
Yep, that's correct.
So it sounds like the city of Caldwell is just doing it by itself, which is, hey, we'll raise the money to enhance this experience within the city because ultimately it will benefit the city's economy and the city in general. Is that accurate?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many people come in from out of town, from out of state to see that rodeo. That's why we're excited for that hotel. It's going to be great for the city to have people now staying in Caldwell rather than coming to the rodeo and then going to Nampa or Boise or Meridian to spend the night, because they don't just spend the night, right? They go out to eat, they go and shop, they do all of these things. And so by doing that, it's going to bring in so much economic growth to the city and new restaurants. The existing restaurants should see more people coming in, the shopping, all of those things will be great for the city of Caldwell.
Caldwell also has not just like, shopping restaurants, but you guys have real industry around you as well, right? Like, what is the move to preserve that? One of the biggest problems that I've spoken with people about land use in recent times, and, when you're talking about land trusts, either Idaho Coalition of Land Trust or American, Ag Land Trust, one of the problems that they run into is, look, when you build a house, for every dollar of city services that house gets, be that ambulance or fire or whatever it might be, for every dollar that they get worth of service, they only return 70 cents back, right? For every dollar that ag land gets, they return back like $1.40 or something like that. So it's a net benefit when you have, from a tax standpoint, from a tax base, when you have agricultural area around you. But you guys are growing so fast. And of course, you're not building the 30-floor skyscraper, you're, stretching out into that ag area. Is there a plan to mitigate that tax loss? Because again, once you build houses, you're never not building them. Like you're never harvesting the house and then building, growing corn again. But you're also losing that tax base that the ag land offered.
Yeah, and I think the big part on that is the commercial and industrial that you can bring into your city. So, and you're spot on with the residential. Typically, residential is never going to pay for itself, but it's a needed commodity in your city. If you want commercial, especially industrial, you need to have your residential, because a lot of those industrial users, they're like, we need to have 70% of our workforce within a certain radius of our structure. Because if there's a big snowstorm or something like that happens, they need their workers still to be able to get there to function. Because if you close a plant down, you're not losing production for a day, you're losing production for a month. And so they want to make sure they have enough people in that vicinity. And so you still need those residences there. But so that's where our industrial growth, our commercial growth really helps to offset that, because as you mentioned with the ag, you do get more back out of it, and industrial and commercial even more so that you can get back out of that. So the industrial growth has been amazing in Caldwell. We have our Sky Ranch area, the North Ranch, those have filled up so quickly. We've actually had to move out even further north into the west with a new urban renewal area out there, bringing in some new industrial growth out there. And so those are the things we've really focused on, and those are great paying jobs as well. So you get great industrial growth, you get good tax base, you get good paying jobs, and the people that are living there to provide that.
I love all of that. What is the industry? Like what are the industrial companies coming in?
Yeah, so many different ones. I know a couple new ones, Federated Ordnance and Nemo Firearms, which is great. So making guns and ammunition.
Sure.
So what's more Idahoan than that? So that's been amazing to see that. And they're doing just tremendous things out there. And so they're looking at even expanding more. I know we were recently at a meeting at the College of Idaho with the Chamber of Commerce that they put on, and they were there talking about a potential new facility that they want to build out there that's going to make it even better on that. So we've got, Fresca moved out there a few years ago from Boise. They transferred from there out to Caldwell. They do they do tortilla manufacturing. They're international, making millions of tortillas every week. And then
making me hungry.
Yeah, and their tortillas are amazing. They are some of the best I've ever had. And then CBH Homes is moving their headquarters to Caldwell. And then that total build out with them and the other industries that are coming with them is going to be about 2 million square feet. So that's going to be an amazing thing as well for that. So as that changes, it does lose ag land on a lot of that. But again, it's surrounded by homes. It's surrounded by other things. So it's difficult to still farm in those areas. And so we think, well, let's grow it here. That way we can preserve the ag land that's on the outskirts of the city. And it grows that tax base as well.
Man, that makes a lot of sense. I have a horribly unfair question to ask you. What do you think about public transit into Boise?
Yes, that is a great question. And it's actually, I think it needs to come to the forefront of everybody's mind, especially with Micron. Micron's doing some incredible things in the expansion that they're having. The project of that size and the thousands, if not tens of thousands of jobs that's going to be that many more people and commuting out to that area. So we've got to look at it, take a serious look at what are we going to do to help get people from point A to point B. It's changing. And so what are we going to do? Is it time to step up and start doing some type of more public transit than we do now? The state doesn't do much funding, if any at all, for public transit. Right. And so those are questions we have to ask. And it's really up to the people, right? Do you want us to just continue building roads so we get a 15-lane highway sooner or later between Caldwell and Boise? Or do you want us to focus more on trying to get people on that public transit? It's a difficult thing because people love their cars. Excuse me.
And if I may ask, first off, are we anywhere close to having like a 10-lane highway? Like 50, when you're like, do we want a 15? It's like, where are all those cars? Right? And the public transit, we have, what is it, like the 40 or the 41, whatever it is, Valley Regional Transit does go in, and Councilman Sebastian Griffin from Nampa was very critical of the utilization of this. I asked about this. I had a conversation with Monica Church, Representative Church, the other day, and we were chatting about jobs because I'm very worried about this state going the way of some of the others, which is you got this like mass inflation. You have essentially like a tiny number of people who are like uber wealthy, and then just all these, workers, the rest of us are just, paying every cent we have to sustain ourselves, which is terrible. And I've seen that play out over long periods of time in my former state. Not a good option. And her feeling was that we needed to connect more people to higher paying jobs downtown. When you're talking about Micron having thousands or tens of thousands of jobs, yeah, sure, that's great. But like, first off, do those jobs exist now, or is that like a hypothetical, some long point in the future? And like, what would it take to get 10,000 cars? Like, so let's say we added 10,000 cars to the morning commute. Everybody came out of Caldwell, like every single person. What would that look like? I don't know, like the frequency or duration of, the congestion of the existing traffic ways to Boise. Would that be like an untenable situation, or, what? How is the increasing public transit the answer to an existing problem we have today?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And I think it is there more things to do? Is it just, do we put all our eggs in that one basket? But what are some other things that we can do? I think that is important to look at that and continue to increase that. But again, it's changing habits. And we talked a little bit about that on some of the other things earlier, that changing people's habits is a very difficult thing. And our habit is to get in our car and drive to wherever we want and then come home. And so if you're changing that habit of, okay, now can't just get in your car and leave. You need to go to the bus station, catch the bus, ride it to wherever you're going, and then maybe catch another ride there to get to work. And so changing those habits is very difficult because you're taking away a little bit of freedom that people have on that. And so they have to be willing to do that. I remember when gas prices, this would have been 20 plus years ago, and gas prices just went crazy at the time. And you finally actually saw numbers of transit increasing because people are like, I'm not paying $5 a gallon to drive. I just can't do it. So they started taking the bus. But then when the gas prices came back down, then they left the bus and went back to the car. And so it just is really those habits of people and what forces them to change those habits or desire to change the habit. And it can be a really tough thing.
Okay. What you just said is exactly what I have been thinking this entire time, which is there is not the incentivization to change. And it's not that people have habits. It's that they have a certain requirement for engagement in the world. Right? Like if you want me to get on the bus, it has to be better than the next best option. Okay. And if you increase the cost, it's like, all right, well, it's better than the next best option because it's cheaper to get on the bus or something like that. So I'll tolerate going to a station. I'll tolerate learning the schedule. I'll tolerate doing all these things. So it's kind of like there isn't a problem right now because people have no problem, or like the easiest option for them is to get in the car. So when people talk that we need more, I feel like there's this elephant in the room, which is, wouldn't it be nice if we had the problem with so many people having jobs in Boise that our freeways were jam-packed? Wouldn't that be great? Well, we're not at that problem yet, because if we were, you'd see more people on the bus, and then you see the bus overcrowded, and then you'd see like people demanding more frequent and more, get higher capacity with public transportation. But we don't have a problem with public transportation at this point from an incentivization standpoint, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. And I think it'll get there. And so the thing is that but you also don't want to wait until you're at that, what would be like a level of service F, right? Where it is so bad that nobody wants to get on the freeway. Nobody wants to drive that. You can't just go from one day driving your car to all of a sudden we have all this great public transportation. So it's like, where's that medium where you're going to have that come in and play? Because for it to get bad enough, it'll take a few years at least to get that public transportation up to provide the needs for those people. So it's almost like you're stuck in that bad situation for a number of years if you didn't prepare for it.
So you can't just like add a bus. If you're like, hey, look, we have a 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and a 7 o'clock pickup, and all of a sudden, like, let's say tomorrow, your phone starts blowing up. It's like, oh my God, the bus is overflowing. Like, the people are fighting to get on the bus, and you're like, can we just get another bus at 5:30, 6:30, and 7:30, or? It's like, can we not ramp it up like that?
So, I mean, you can, but again, it's the cost, right? So with the like VRT, for example, they are on a budget. And so if all of a sudden they need to buy a new bus, that's a significant amount of money that maybe wasn't in their budget that they got to buy. They have to get a new employee to drive the bus. They got to make the route changes. So there's things that come into play on that. And so it seems like, let's just go and throw another route in. But then again, you need the bus to be there. You need the employees to be there.
You need the funding there.
You need the funding
with the funding coming from cities, Caldwell, Nampa, Meridian, with the funding coming from them and them having line items and every dollar of that budget already allocated. If we were like 2 months into an annual budget, we'd have to wait another 10 months before we could earmark purchasing and then salary and all of that.
Yeah. And in today's world too, it's a bit different because the buses, you just don't go down to your car lot and buy a bus. It's like, I know like for our fire trucks, I mean, it's like a 3 to 5 year wait to get a fire truck built. Buses not that bad, but it's still a year to 2 years to get. So once you place your order, the bus doesn't come next week. It's probably at least a year out to get that bus in. So you got to get the funding for it, and then you got to pay for it, and then you have to wait for it to get there. So it does take some time to get those things rolled out.
Gotcha. Okay. So that perfectly explains. It's like, no. You got to plan ahead. But bottom line is we could see a trend. If we're like, hey, we're trending towards full capacity in a year or two, let's get this in the works now. We could do that, but we're not trending towards that. Like, we don't have that anxiety yet.
I would actually think we're getting there pretty quick. I know there were some great meetings recently. The Boise Metro Chamber does a great event up in Sun Valley every year, the leadership conference. And there was a meeting that we were able to sit down as mayors and with some big community leaders here in the Valley and talk about this exact same thing, because we feel that we're getting to that point. And so it's like, okay, we've talked about this for 20 plus years. We need to start doing something about it. And so that's kind of, I believe we are at that tipping point and starting to look at that at a more serious level to see, okay, we need to start doing something so we can be ready when it gets here, because it's already starting to get here.
Man, if we have that problem, that's great, right? Like, if we have more accessible employment and we have higher paying jobs, that'd be wonderful. And if you have the ability, like, Caldwell's not that far from Boise, but if we could make it more attainable for more people, and you don't have people with the burden of, like I knew people when I was younger that, working couple, but they only had one car for purposes of saving money. So the mom was able to work from home, and they had 2 little kids, and they were able to walk them to daycare or school. And then the dad would take the car and he would drive to wherever. And that allowed them to save money, which is a great option, especially for a young family. I mean, totally makes sense. And if you have an additional capacity to maybe have one car, leave the car at home for emergencies or whatever, and then somebody take public transit to a quality, high paying job, and also unattainable house, right? Because if your job is in Micron and everything around there is really expensive, Caldwell's a beautiful place and a wonderful place to live, and more attainable from a home purchasing standpoint. So it's like you just connect those two and it's a win for everybody. If we have that need, which it sounds like we're getting to. Yeah.
And I think it's also making it convenient for people too. Because like as we're talking, I'm thinking about, I used to ride the bus. I used to work in Boise, lived in Caldwell. And so I would, and it was a pain in the butt. I'd have to get up early, I'd have to get on my bike, and I'd have to bike to the bus stop, and then I would bus to downtown Boise, get on my bike, and then bike to work. And that was in rain, sleet, snow, you name it.
Bro, what kind of tires were you having? What kind of bicycle did you have here? You really biked around in like the snow?
I did.
What job were you working?
So I was actually working at ACHD at the time on that. So, but it was because, it was 20, 30 years ago. And so money was tight. And
Sure.
so it was cheaper to do it that way. I got a free bus pass working at ACHD. And so for us, it was the economics, and I was just cheap. I didn't want to have to waste the gas,
Sure.
drive by another car. So my wife used the car to get to work, and then I would do those things. And again, we didn't have, we didn't have any kids at the time, things of that nature. But now, again, my priorities are different. I have kids, they're in soccer, they're in football. I don't want to sit around for an hour waiting for the bus to get home and miss the first half of my kid's football game. So I'm going to drive my car. And so it's, how do you make that convenience for the people by, additional routes, making it quicker, not stopping at all these things. The things I loved, so that route that I took, it was a direct Caldwell to Boise. You didn't stop anywhere. And I loved that. That doesn't exist anymore. That route is gone. And so there's not that convenience. And so if it's not convenient, for that comes into play, right? The cost, the convenience, all of these things. And if it doesn't pencil for that person at the date, they're not going to do it.
Right. And they may, in fact, the cost of getting there may be prohibitive to the point where they're like, yeah, I could make $300 a day or $400 a day. Like, you make $400 a day working somebody somewhere, you're, making six figures annually. Right. And it may be worth it to that person to absorb like a $20 or $30 per day fee, because you got to deal with parking, you got to deal with gas, you got to deal with all these things. But somebody making $100 or $200 a day, it's not going to pencil out for them to spend $30 or $40. And they may not, like, if you're doing $200 a day, you're making roughly $50,000 a year. That's not a bad job. And if that job exists in Boise and it doesn't exist near Caldwell where you live, you may miss out on that employment opportunity completely. So essentially, you're just saying, like, look, if there are enough people and there's enough incentive financially, then you can make it happen. But it will add more opportunities for people to engage in that if there are better options with public transit.
Yeah, because if you don't have the buy-in from the people, it's not worth it, because it makes no sense to do the outlay, to pay the money, to get the extra routes, and then not have people on. Now you're wasting that taxpayer dollar. And so it's really, you've got to get the people to buy in on it. And that's by, educating, seeing what do they need, how do you fill those needs, and then just moving forward in that direction. But I think if you don't get the buy-in of the public, the people you're serving, then it's just going to be a wasted cause.
What do you think about local option taxes, where essentially people elect to tax themselves in the city of Caldwell to engage in some specific service like public transit?
I don't see the reason to not have that. I mean, like you said, it is the people deciding to tax. And so they have to decide on it, approve on it, give a time frame on it. And so I think it could be a good thing. You're allowing the local government at the local level, as local as you can get it, is the better. So if you allow those locals to decide, how do we want to do this? I think that could be a good thing for those, because again, it's the people deciding, do we want it or not? Is it worth it? Again, it's like back to priorities. Is it priority enough for me to vote yes, to tax myself to provide these services? And then you say, yes, it is, or no, it's not. And if the majority say yes, then you have the people moving that forward. So I think, again, it's letting the people decide what are their priorities at that level.
Why? Okay. We have a system similar to that with like our school districts, right? We decide if we want to do a bond or a levy, or if we don't, right? Yes, no, whatever. And that is us electing to tax ourselves. What's the difference between that and the local option tax? Because again, like, I know there's a distinction here. It just doesn't really make sense to me. It's like, okay, you're just electing to tax yourself in a different way. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I don't know if there is, to be honest. I've never thought of it that way, especially levies, because levies come up and they're like for 2 years or 5 years, we're going to add this in so we can make sure that we can pay our teachers what we need, the sports that they're there, the SROs get paid from that a lot of times. And so I don't really know if there's much difference between those two, because again, it's that taxing agency, the school district, asking the people, say, hey, are you willing to tax yourself for this amount of years for these purposes at this amount of dollars? It'd be the same thing with the city. Are you willing to tax yourself this amount of money for this type of event or whatever it is for this amount of time?
There's a lot there. Yeah. As you creep up on the 100,000 population mark, there are different pieces of legislation that target cities only over at 100,000 or greater. Are you concerned about any of those?
So, I mean, it's a difficult thing. I hate targeting cities just because of certain populations, things of that nature. And I used to serve in the legislature, and I understand that. And so, I was in the legislature for a couple of terms, and I appreciated that. And so I got to see what that world
So you've
is like.
seen how the sauce on both sides, man. You were part of the problem. So when we talk about the state officials, you were one of those guys.
I was. So,
Wait, when was that?
So that was 2017 to 2020 when I was in the legislature. So
how was that?
I really appreciated it, enjoyed it. So I got to make some incredible friends through that. I'm still actually in association with many of them. And you kind of see both sides of it, which is great. And that's what when I came into city politics to kind of understand and help the mayor was like, look, I know that we love to complain about the state level, but you got to remember they're doing their job just like we're trying to do ours.
Right.
Now, I wish that we could get together at the table more and discuss our differences and how can we work better together and kind of see each other's viewpoints on that. Because I think a lot of them haven't seen a city perspective. There's some that have, but it's a different world in that regard. So I respect those state legislators. I don't agree with them all the time, but I respect them. Speaker Moyle is actually a really good friend of mine. We got along really great. We didn't see eye to eye on the issues, but I really appreciated his ability to come and let me know where he was at on different things. And so I appreciated the difference that we had on that and respect that. And so we got to realize that it's okay to think differently. And how can we still work together at the end of the day?
Man, he's been in there since 1998.
Yes, he has been in there for a while.
For a minute.
Yep.
And I've had him on several times. I've enjoyed every conversation.
Yep.
And
he's a character. I love talking to Mike.
And, whenever I talk to people from cities, they bemoan the constraints of 389, which is understandable because they're like, hey, this is legislation constraining our ability to function in the way we feel is right. Mm-hmm. But to your point, if you speak with Speaker Moyle, he's like, listen, I had constituents coming up to me telling me something had to be done about their property taxes going up, specifically because their property taxes are going up because of growth that wasn't their fault. Mm-hmm. And so you look at both sides and you're like, yeah, man. And if you didn't do anything, then, your constituents would have been mad at you too. So like, mm-hmm. I greatly appreciate it. It's like, you change your perspective and you can see why people do things. It's mm-hmm. like your obligation or your consideration when you're a state level official is going to be different than when you're, like a mayor balancing a budget or something of that nature. Yeah. But I mean, there's because of the way the state constitution is written and Speaker Moyle educated me on this, like the state constitution prohibits us from having a taxing mechanism similar to that of states on the West Coast, specifically Prop 13. It specifically prohibits that. We cannot treat properties differently. So even if you have a house that was built and purchased 40 years ago and the person purchased it for $25,000 and God bless them, great. And then you have another house next door that was built yesterday and sold for $500,000, they both get treated equally. As far as the taxing system is concerned, they are equal in cost. And we can't change that. We can't say, hey, your tax base is set off the $25,000 when you purchased it. It has to be assessed value today. So instead of constraining that, which you can't do, he had to constrain the budgets. Mm-hmm. Well, he didn't have to, but his idea was to constrain budgets, the rate at which budgets could grow. But that obviously created a problem because then we have this exponential growth that, you can't necessarily predict, but we have this exponential growth. And now the services that are servicing those, the property taxes have been resolved, at least to some degree. But then the services servicing the property taxes are it's just a hot mess, man. There's no way out without getting your nose bloodied.
Yeah. And it's a vicious cycle. It really is. And I think a lot of times we focus on the cities, like you say, the negatives that come out, like 389, things like that. But there's good things too, that the legislature does. So I want to make sure the cities recognize that. No, there's nothing good.
There's nothing good that they do.
There are a few of them. I know that, and I appreciate there was legislation not too long ago where cities now can give like tax rebates. Yeah. The state could always do it. Now cities can do that. So I know I proposed in the budget that we're going through right now, we had some surplus from this last year, some fund balance that came in with some costs that came under that we were expecting. And so we want to utilize some of that to save for like future buildings, things of that nature, but also proposing to give some of that back to the taxpayers, especially those that are in need, those that are on fixed incomes, to give a property tax rebate from the city to help offset some of those increased costs. So I appreciate that I have the ability to propose that to council where 5-10 years ago, I didn't even have that option. So there are some good things that come out of there.
That's wild, man. I think I was telling you right before we got going, I spoke with the director of the DMV this morning, mm-hmm. and an example very similar to yours, it just reminds me that although a lot of people have a jaded perspective of government, both local, state, and federal, mm-hmm. there are very clear examples of good things happening, like you proposing to give a tax rebate. And the city was like, mm-hmm. That makes my head hurt to think that's even a possibility. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, look, we got more money than we needed. We're going to stash some of it away in a savings account for future stuff, and then we're giving some of it back. And we did this because our costs came in lower than anticipated. And it was like, okay, just the idea that you had a cost associated with a certain project and it came in under budget. It's like, how does that work? Like, it seems like an impossibility. Yet here it is. We came in under, and then we're not just going to allocate that money for random other stuff. It's like, no, I'm saving a little bit so I can save you future dollars, and then I'm going to give you back some money right now. It's like, God, yeah, man, like that's fantastic. Go you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I think that, as I said, it's the right thing to do. And I think at the end of the day, that's how I base my decisions. What's the right thing to do for the citizens of Caldwell to make their lives better and easier as they live in our great community?
You guys are doing a lot, but what is, if I may ask, is there anything that's hanging out there that you're like, gosh, man, we're doing a lot of good stuff, but if we could snag this one thing, it would be awesome. Like, is there anything like that?
So I'd say there's a few like that. I know there's a few projects we're working on right now. Just one, I had an amazing meeting a couple of weeks ago with our economic development director, an individual that's looking at, he's looking for a location to do just a great project. And so we're really trying to work on that. That would be amazing for the city of Caldwell. There's some others as well. There's been talk about like an outdoor amphitheater in Caldwell. We've looked at some different sites, and I believe we're getting closer on that. That would be phenomenal. So that'd be around a 5,000 seat amphitheater in Caldwell, which would be great for the community and just bring great talent in there and opportunities for people for, again, restaurants, retail, hotels, things of that nature. And then also shopping centers. We're actively looking at shopping centers. We love, for Caldwell, what we try to distinguish ourselves is we want to be the place that everybody wants to come to. We want to make it easy for people to come, for businesses to relocate, to build there, to grow, and to do those things. And so we do whatever we can to make it very business friendly. And we do a pretty great job at that. And so we've been recruiting, and we go out and we meet with developers, we meet with builders, and we do those things. So people know, look, we want you. We want you to come to Caldwell, and this is why. This is what we can do for you. And so it's been great to see that. So we have a lot of, national retailers that are looking at us, and some great announcements that'll be coming up here in the very near future about some grocers and retailers that are coming to Caldwell. And so we are working on all those just nonstop to bring them into our city.
Grocers. Like Whole Foods or something?
So,
or can you not say?
So we're close. We were supposed to make the announcement today, I think, actually. So we're getting very close on some of those. So we're very, very excited.
Oh, you can't tell me you haven't made the announcement. Oh my God, I love it. Well, that's awesome, man. That's great. And as far as I know, we've been talking about a lot of different things, but as far as the functionality of Caldwell, like, you guys have a robust and successful culture that's attracting talent. Right? Like, when you say you go out and you look for talent and you look for the right things, like, you have great, successful people that enjoy working for Caldwell and are into the culture that Caldwell has produced, right?
Yeah, I completely. We have some amazing individuals that work for the city of Caldwell. Sharing with you a little bit before we started, we just had 5 new officers that got sworn in last night at City Council that we were able to introduce. And all of them said they came to Caldwell because they wanted to be here. It wasn't because it was the only job they could get. They looked around, they shopped the market, and Caldwell was the place they wanted to be. And so we love that. And the appointed officials that we have, our executive team, is bar none the best in the state. Our economic development director, he is incredible. Public Works director, our Parks and Rec director, our finance director, our police chief, fire chief. It's just down the board. We have just amazing individuals. And the thing, and I obviously bragging a little bit, our community, our city is just filled with great people. The businesses, we have these amazing businesses come to Caldwell. Why they offer a great product, the best thing is they're even greater people. Amano is a great example of that. Amazing Mexican restaurant, one of the best in the country.
Incredible. Really good.
Yeah, and if you get to know Saul and Becca, the owners, you'll be like, wow, these people are even greater than their food, which you don't think is possible, but they are just salt of the earth good people. And that's what I love about
hook it up with Saul and Becca. I want to meet these people.
Yeah,
I'll have them on the show.
They are awesome. They are amazing.
Yeah. Anybody curious, you should go try it out. Mayor, listen, I've had you on here for a while. Is there anything you'd like to hit here at the end?
So no, I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I think it's just, Caldwell is just such a great place. I tell people if they haven't seen it, they need to come out. If they saw it 20 years ago, they haven't seen it. They need to come back. And especially the rodeo is amazing. The fair, Winter Wonderland. If you have not been to Winter Wonderland in downtown Caldwell, you have not seen anything yet. So I used to own a small business before I was mayor, and it was on the plaza, and we had so many people come in and they say, like, I feel like I'm in a Hallmark movie. And that's amazing. That's the greatest compliment you can get, I think, as a city in the wintertime. And so come to Caldwell, check out our Wonderland. You won't be disappointed.
Oh, absolutely. It's on it. Mayor, thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate you. Thanks for what you're doing for Idaho. And we'll do this again.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.